excited to now introduce you to today's guest. Here is Facebook insider and whistleblower with Project Veritas, Ryan Hartwig. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Hey, April. Yeah, thanks for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here. And congrats on your new show, by the way.
Well, thank you so much. And I want to remind everybody, you know, we're talking about everything that you've exposed throughout your time with Facebook. I've got your book. Everyone needs to go and purchase this right now. Ryan, tell us, what is the best link for them to go and purchase your book?
Yeah, I mean, if you just Google, you know, behind the mask of Facebook, you'll find some links to it. I know some people are not big fans of Amazon now. So there's different, you can buy it on Barnes & Noble, bookshop.org, IndieBound, or you can just go to the Skyhorse Publishing is my publisher, and they have a link to all those websites. But yeah, behind the mask of Facebook.
And we're going to put that on our show as well. So check those links below in the description, all the details there. But Ryan, walk us through your experience. First of all, tell us what your role was at Facebook and what made you decide to say, I've got to do something about what they're doing.
Yeah, so I started working as a contractor on behalf of Facebook in 2018, March of 2018. So I started there just clueless as the whole process. When I got the job, I didn't even know it was Facebook until I actually started working there. So I was working for Cognizant in Phoenix, Arizona, and we had a contract with Facebook for the content moderation. So essentially I was the one reviewing. If you report a post on Facebook or Instagram, it would come to me and I would make a decision based on Facebook's policy if that content would stay up or if it would get taken down. So early on, I didn't have any preconceived notions about Facebook as far as their policies. But after about a year there, I noticed some examples of bias creeping in where they were censoring conservatives or Trump supporters. And so that's basically where it started. And so then after a year, I reached out to a congressman, a couple senators, and didn't really hear back very soon. And so I reached out to some news organizations, and they referred me to Project Veritas. And that's when I started filming with the hidden camera.
It's interesting that the news industry has referred you to Project Veritas. I mean, honestly, like here we are, two whistleblowers, right? You'd think that this would be something that the mainstream media would have jumped on and wanted to alert the public about. But, you know, unfortunately, we're in a day and age where that wasn't the case. But so you ended up partnering with Project Veritas and gathering documents from Facebook to be able to share with the public. Some issues that you revealed and found out as a content moderator are very pertinent to what's happening right now on the southern border. Can we talk about that? Specifically on page 103 of your book, you were mentioning about human smuggling and how they were trying to censor certain areas regarding that. So go ahead and tell us about that experience.
Yeah, and as someone that speaks fluent Spanish and also at Facebook, part of my job was to review the content from Latin America. So I saw a lot of content about human smuggling, about immigration, and I live in Arizona, and so
so you're like right there.
Yeah, we see it firsthand. I mean, we see it in our communities here in the Phoenix metro area. But yeah, in the book I talk about that. So Facebook's policy, and I quote word from their policy. So obviously they have a policy against recruiting people for human trafficking, coyotes trying to smuggle people. So if you're the coyote and you're posting, hey, $100, I charge $1,000 across the border, then we would delete that obviously. But what's fascinating is they say the type of content that does not violate our policies and is therefore allowed on our platform. And it says we allow requests for information or solicitation for help on how to get smuggled. So a coyote can't post, but if I want to get contacted by a coyote and say, hey, I want to be smuggled, I want to get across the border, we do allow those. So it's backwards. Like you think they'd be protecting the victim, and then also so if I say, hey, we'll help you get across the border, we would delete that. But if I say, hey, I want to get across the border, help me get across, that stays up.
Yeah. Now, so when you were faced with this stuff, did you ultimately think like, okay, we need to contact somebody within Facebook to say, hey, we need to adjust, you should adjust your policies? Or how did you basically go about, your methodology of thinking, obviously something's wrong. This isn't correct. Facebook legally, I guess, is saying, no, we don't, allow child trafficking on our website, but then they do. So what were your next steps?
Yeah, I mean, that one, didn't really stand out to me at the time. Some of this is very nuanced. So you look at it and you're very busy during the day. So you're reviewing about a dozen different policies like this. So we did provide feedback to Facebook on other policies like credit card skimming, where we would see keywords people were using, and we gave that information to Facebook, and they revised their policies. So we did have an impact that way. With some of these more like politically sensitive topics, I mean, the head policy manager, Sean Browder, who's featured in the Project Veritas video, he's a Bernie supporter. So it's like I could probably provide that feedback to my supervisors, but I don't know if they're gonna discuss that or implement change with Facebook. But yeah, it's very shocking, because we also hear from Nick Clegg, the head of global affairs for Facebook, in February in a leaked Zoom call, that he was talking about how they want to respect the laws of each country. Well, how does this respect the laws of each country if you're allowing humans to be trafficked and volunteer to be trafficked? And also this is question E. Under operational guidelines, what type of human smuggling content is ignored? So you're allowed to explain gaps in Border Patrol. So if you say the shift changes at midnight are often exploited, or the patrols are less lax or more lax on from July to October, that's also allowed. So you're talking about people actively seeking to evade law enforcement, break the law across an international border, and Facebook says that's okay.
Wow. So Ryan, one of the things I really admire about you too is that not only did you reach out to congressmen and you wanted to expose this through Project Veritas, but you also started a foundation. Can you tell us about that? Yeah.
So the Hartwig Foundation for Free Speech is a 501c3 nonprofit, and we just applied. We applied early this year for federal status. But basically, the purpose is to advocate for free speech on the internet. I mean, we're in a time where the purpose of the internet was really to get away from that government regulation, and we're seeing government and big tech encroach on that. So really, it should be a free platform for everyone to use to share their ideas and thoughts. So yeah, we're advocating for free speech. I mean, it's not just one viewpoint. I don't want people on the left to be censored as well, and that's where this threat from big tech is really dangerous. And separately, I'm working with someone named Jason Fick, who sued Facebook, and who's currently working on a case to sue the United States government under the Fifth Amendment. So that's what's different from Trump's lawsuit. Trump is suing Facebook and Twitter themselves, but the root of the problem is the government giving,
this legislation, the domain,
But yeah, so there's
No, go ahead.
So anyways, so there's a Hartwig Foundation, which is a 501c3, which I'm a part of. We're doing a lot of great things, just getting the word out. But there's also this separate issue with legislation to sue the United States government.
A lot of people would be shocked to know, as I was reading your book, it was very disturbing and shocking to me, the content that was being put forth on Facebook that you had to moderate. You saw murders, horrible things that people were wanting to post on there. As someone who has to view that content for your job, tell me about what that was like for you, and how did you maintain a healthy mental state viewing those disturbing images?
Yeah, it was a big deal. So to give you an idea, like most of the workers there were in their early 20s, very young worker population. And they told us from the very beginning, like before you even got hired, in the initial interview, they pulled out a laptop and they showed you like, dogs being attacked or cut up, lewd pornography or like anime pornography, and they say, hey, this is the type of stuff you're going to be seeing on a regular basis. It could be like a cartel beheading. So you were aware going into what you were getting into. And I remember I asked them, is there a way to skip? If you get something on your screen, because it's one at a time, is there a way to skip to the next one? They said, no, you can't skip it. You have to like look at it. Wow. And so it was difficult. I was raised very Christian. So it was difficult to see that type of content, but anything ranging from bestiality to like pornographic content, content referencing rape. So they did have Cognizant, I will say, like they did a decent job of providing counseling on site. And so we had counselors on site 24/7 that we could talk to anytime. And we had a hotline we could call. So I did take advantage of that as much as possible, just to learn techniques, because you don't want to go take that home with you.
Right.
And I think I did a fairly good job of doing that. But, we did have coworkers who couldn't handle it, coworkers who quit. Child porn is very disturbing. I had a coworker who he couldn't sleep for days because he has a child, and that was just sticking in his head. But there are techniques, and I felt supported personally, but it was relatively low pay for the type of stuff.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's such a mental strain to have to view those things. Ryan, where do you see this going next, as far as the legislation that you talked about, and just trying to continue to maintain some semblance of free speech on the internet? Do you see anything coming up that gives some people some hope? And what would you say to those that are still lingering on Facebook because that's where the majority of their community or family members and friends are? From an insider's perspective, is it even worth staying on there, or do we really need to be moving completely off of that platform? Can you speak to that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, I mean, to be blunt, even if you uninstall Facebook or log out and delete your account, they're still probably tracking your data in your browser. So it's really hard to escape from someone, some company that nefarious that's always stealing your data. But yeah, I mean, that's the beauty of our marketplace and capitalism, is that we can, as consumers, we can choose different products. So yeah, I would advise against using Facebook or their products, but use Gab. You can use blockchain social media like pocketnet.app, and then this goes as well to your browsers. I mean, instead of using Chrome, maybe there's one called Brave that respects your privacy, and then your search engine, you can use DuckDuckGo. I think there's one called Swiss Cow.
That's like a search engine?
I believe it's either a search engine or a browser. But it's one that's it doesn't steal your data. So yeah, I mean, and then moving forward with this whole issue, I mean, I've talked to people who've kind of lost hope about big tech and getting things back to where they should be. In other countries like Canada, it's really an uphill battle. But here in the U.S., I really think that Trump's lawsuit is a good step in the right direction. It's waking people up. But we have all these election audits going on. We have a lot of other movements going on. But I think for too long we were quiet about big tech.
We let it happen. We were asleep.
Yeah.
I think too, a lot of people don't want to think that the government could be spying on them, or that there are these nefarious, evil people in the world who, this is exactly what they want, is to have this big brother type of society where everything that you do is surveilled and documented about you. And, the fact that people could be so cruel as to do such terrible things to children and all of these things. I mean, it's a lot. It's a lot for, I would say, the general public to absorb and take in that this is actually happening. But I think it's a very important step that we all need to come to, is that there are evil people in this world. They're doing terrible things. Your freedoms are being violated and removed from you without you even realizing it. And so I really appreciate you providing us with those websites where people can go, because that's what I seek to do here on the show, is not just give you information, but give you resources of, okay, so get off of Facebook, and here's a platform that isn't going to track you, sell your data, things like that. So any other things that you can think of that we can alert the public to regarding how to stay safe? I don't know if you were aware, but just in the last couple of days, they made an announcement regarding proton mail, and that the Swedish government was wanting the access and the data to people's IP addresses. Did you see that article at all?
I did see that. So I believe it mentioned that it would be they would be required, proton mail would be required to log or basically give over IP addresses for illegal behavior according to Swiss law. Well, what's illegal? And we see, it's very broad. It can be very broad. I mean, is attending a Trump rally in Washington, D.C. on January 6th. Now, the act was just being there illegal. I mean, that's where we're going as a country. So, there's a great website, reclaimthenet.org, that has censorship news just from globally. Reclaimthenet.org. But I really think a great way just to support, some of these lawsuits moving forward, support Trump's lawsuit. Also, socialmediafreedom.org. Join Jason Fick. It's not a class action lawsuit, but he's one of the few people that has standing to actually sue the United States government, because this case went to the Supreme Court in January. Of course, they chose not to hear it like that, as they've been doing with other important cases. But just as consumers, be aware there's plenty of products out there besides your Google and your Apple, and these companies like Facebook and Google. It's funny we use the term monopoly, but they're duopolies. So these duopolies shouldn't be given so much power. And as consumers, we really can make a difference if we stand together and choose not to use some of these services.
Do you particularly have an email service provider that you could recommend to us that you know of, that, because I thought proton mail was good up until 3 days ago, and I thought, oh no, this is not good. That the Swedish government wants our information. Do you have any resources in that way?
That's a good question. So I'll ask. Dr. Robert Epstein is a researcher, a psychologist who's done a lot of research. He's one of at the forefront of some of this, fight against big tech. And I'll ask his recommendation. I think for now we'll see what happens with proton mail. I know a lot of people are using it. It's definitely, it can definitely
better
be less,
than Gmail.
Yeah, better than Gmail. Yeah. That's a good question. I'll have to get back to you on that one.
Yeah, well, thank you. And I'm sure this won't be the last time that you're on Face the Facts, because I definitely want an update when you get some more information regarding the lawsuit that Fick is bringing against the government. That's really big info. And everyone, I want you to please support Ryan Hartwig. Please support what he's doing. He is a hero. These are the type of people that we need to be financially supporting right now. So head over to his website, order his book, check out his foundation for free speech. And Ryan, we thank you so much for your contribution to America and to this world. And thanks so much for being here on